When my daughter requested me to find a new residence for my last years, claiming I was no longer useful, I collected my possessions, just like the obedient mother I had always been. Just 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, realizing that my supposedly loving husband had played the longest tactical scheme possible. Victoria was about to realize that sometimes the lesser pawn becomes the king. If this content reaches you, remember to subscribe and let me know where you are. I want to detail my transformation from a penniless widow to the person holding all the power. Because, dear, this tale holds more plot twists than a pretzel maker. 8 weeks earlier, I was known as Margaret Sullivan, a faithful wife of 43 years and mother to one incredibly ungrateful offspring. Following Robert's fatal heart attack at the age of 71, I thought my life was ending. Victoria arrived during my time of grief, resembling a vulture, dressed in costly clothes, offering condolences regarding how difficult this state of affairs must be for me. "Mother, there is no realistic way for you to manage this massive house by yourself," she had mentioned, her voice saturated with fake concern. The flights of steps, the necessary maintenance, and all the memories. It is simply not healthy. I ought to have detected the underlying self-interest beneath her apparent concern. Victoria had always been Robert's favourite offspring, his little princess who was incapable of doing wrong. When she married Kevin, the finance expert, and started having children, Robert focused his affection completely on them. For my part, I remained only the person responsible for cooking food, keeping things clean, and ensuring everything operated smoothly. After the funeral service, Victoria grew increasingly insistent about my living situation. She often brought Kevin along for dinner gatherings where they cornered me with real estate paperwork and data on retirement homes. "Mother, these places are amazing. You could spend time with people your generation, participate in activities, and have zero responsibilities." Their true goal was no property to share and no difficult mother to look after. The final blow occurred last Tuesday. I had been living in what Victoria currently called our home for 6 weeks since Robert died, sleeping only in the guest room because I could not bear to clear out our shared bedroom. Victoria showed up unannounced, accompanied by Kevin and 2 heavy suitcases. "Mother, we have made a decision. Kevin received the promotion and we need to move into the city right away. This house is ideal for us." I looked at her, struggling to grasp the meaning. "Move in here." "But this is my house." Victoria's mask briefly dropped, showing the cold, deliberate scheming underneath. "In fact, Mother, as per Dad's will, I received all assets. The property, the monetary assets, the entirety. I was allowing you to stay here out of kindness, but the time has come for you to find your own dwelling." Those statements hit me like a physical punch. "Victoria, there must certainly be a mistake." "No mistake. Father was aware I would manage his inheritance more competently than you possibly could. You never understood monetary matters or investments. You were only the wife. Only the wife." For decades compressed into those minimal 3 words. Then she delivered the most cruel blow. "Go find another place for your last years. You have no function now." I packed up my belongings within 24 hours. 43 years of marriage fitting into 2 bags and 1 modest box containing pictures. Victoria watched from the doorway, checking her watch as if I was making her late for an important commitment. "There is a satisfactory older adult facility on Maple Street," she offered with the bright tone of someone recommending a quality eatery. "Extremely cheap. I am positive they currently have openings cheap." My daughter was gaining an inheritance of $33 million, yet suggested I investigate what amounted to a subsidized housing complex for elderly people. Kevin placed my suitcases into their expensive car with the mechanical speed of a person discarding trash. "Margaret, you will enjoy regaining your self-sufficiency," he declared, avoiding direct eye contact. No further worries regarding house upkeep or real estate taxes. No further house was his hidden meaning. While we drove away, I watched my house, Robert's house, and now Victoria's house vanish in the rearview mirror. I did not fail to notice the profound irony. I had invested 40 years turning that property into a home, organizing Victoria's birthday parties, caring for Robert during illness, and looking after every small element he cherished. Now I was being driven to an inexpensive motel resembling an unwelcome guest who had stayed too long. The Sunset Inn was exactly what one would expect from accommodation priced at $49 per night. Flimsy walls, scratchy towels, and carpeting that was certainly past its prime. Victoria passed me $200 in cash as if she were giving a gratuity to hotel staff. "This ought to cover your expenses for a few days while you get settled," she mentioned. "I will ask Kevin to wire some money to your bank once we organize Dad's legal papers. Some money that belonged to me." Following their departure, I sat on the dipping mattress and struggled to understand the recent events. Over the course of just 3 hours, I had transformed from a sorrowful widow into an older person without a home. The person I had nurtured, cared for, and made sacrifices for had thrown me away like outdated medicine. But while sitting in that dismal motel room, a feeling started to bother me. Robert had always been precise with his affairs, painstakingly orderly with vital records. He had shown me the will years ago, clarifying his wishes, ensuring I grasped all the details, and I felt utterly convinced that the document she quoted was incorrect. Robert possessed many qualities. He was conservative, sometimes rigid, and occasionally dismissive regarding money issues. Nevertheless, he was not malicious. The husband who had supported me during my mother's death, who gave me surprise flowers yearly on our anniversary, would never have left me impoverished. The next day, I utilized the motel's Wi-Fi connection to look up Robert's legal representative, Harrison Fitzgerald. The same professional who managed the acquisition of our house and other corporate transactions. Throughout the years, his office was located downtown, requiring a 20-minute ride on the bus, which used up valuable cash, but seemed essential. Harrison Fitzgerald was a respectable man in his 70s with gentle eyes visible through his metal-rimmed spectacles. When his assistant announced that Mrs. Sullivan was there concerning her husband's inheritance, he appeared truly shocked. "Margaret, my friend, I had been expecting your visit. I tried phoning your house multiple times, but Victoria claimed you were away on a trip." On a trip. This is what my daughter reported to him. Ma. "Fitzgerald, I must ask you about Robert's final will." He seemed confused. "Certainly. Did Victoria fail to give you your version?" I provided her with the primary document and multiple photocopies after the official reading. I felt sick. There had been a formal reading. "Margaret, your attendance was required. Victoria reported that you were overly distressed and that she would manage all matters and ensure you received your proper inheritance." My complexion went white as the truth became evident. Ma. "Fitzgerald, I was never informed about any reading. Victoria insisted that she was the sole heir." Harrison Fitzgerald's demeanor changed from bewilderment to distress. He grabbed a bulky folder, his actions suddenly rapid. "Margaret, that cannot be correct. Your husband's final document is highly precise regarding your inheritance." He withdrew a paper I recognized, with Robert's tidy signature at the end, certified and verified. But when Harrison started reciting the contents, I understood Victoria had been deceitful about every aspect. I, Robert James Sullivan, of good mental health and physicality, hereby leave to my cherished wife, Margaret, and Sullivan the subsequent, our main house located at 847 Oakwood Drive, incorporating all furniture and personal belongings. Furthermore, I grant her 70% of all monetary wealth, investments, and accounts, equating to around $23 million. I felt dizzy. $23 million. The house, 70% of the total assets. Harrison proceeded with the reading, his voice sounding graver. To my daughter, Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I allot $10 million to be managed in a trust, with payments starting on her 4th to 5th birthday, conditional upon how she treats her mother after my death, conditional upon her treatment of me. Robert was aware. In some way, he had predicted exactly what Victoria would try to execute. Ma. Fitzgerald, I murmured. Victoria claimed I got nothing. She moved into my home. She provided me $200 and suggested I look for a retirement facility. The senior attorney's face reddened with fury. Margaret, what Victoria has done is called elder abuse and fraud. She has performed several serious crimes, yet she presented legal documents, most likely fake or papers from an older, unused version. Your husband revised his will half a year before he died precisely because he worried about Victoria's views on money and her feeling of deserving special treatment. The room felt unstable. All the times Victoria had ignored my viewpoints, interrupted me during family dinners, and rolled her eyes when I tried to comment on their costly trips or Kevin's corporate actions. Robert had been watching, assessing, and drawing conclusions. There is something additional, Margaret. The condition in Victoria's trust clearly mandates that if she does not treat you with honor and respect following my demise, the whole $10 million passes to you instead. I gazed at him stunned. Are you saying I am saying your daughter just lost herself $10 million? Her portion of the inheritance is now yours also. You are not receiving $23 million, Margaret. You are inheriting $33 million along with the house and all private possessions. The irony was so complete it was nearly funny. Victoria was so desperate to seize her inheritance that she activated the exact provision put in place specifically to shield me from her avarice. What course of action should I take now? I questioned, my voice hardly stable. Harrison grinned, and for the first time since Robert's death, I felt true affection directed towards me. Right now, sweetie, we will contact law enforcement regarding the deception, and then we will phone Victoria and tell her she is about to experience the biggest surprise ever. Can she legally challenge this? Using which resources? She will soon learn that every single account she believed she managed is legally mine. Every asset, every bank holding, every investment except her own house is suspended while her deceitful conduct is investigated. I pictured Victoria in my dwelling, likely already organizing remodeling, buying replacement furnishings using money she presumed was hers. Kevin was probably figuring out the impact of the legacy on his finance management. They were unaware that in roughly 6 hours their entire existence would collapse. Harrison Fitzgerald's office turned into the central headquarters for what he happily referred to as Operation Justice. He reached out to law enforcement, the financial institutions, and a private detective while I remained in his leather seat, still grasping the extent of Victoria's fraud. The fraudulent papers appear quite intricate, Detective Rodriguez noted as she examined the fake will Victoria presented to me. This was not an offense committed on impulse. Someone meticulously organized this. Do you believe Victoria had help? I inquired. Highly probable. Producing believable fake legal records demands specialized expertise and contacts. We must explore if Kevin or someone within his financial sphere participated. Within 120 minutes, all bank accounts were inaccessible. Victoria's plastic cards tied to what she believed were her inheritance accounts were rejected. The house services, which she had already switched into her name, were stopped awaiting verification of ownership. My cell phone chimed exactly at 3:47 in the afternoon. Victoria's identifier appeared on the display. Mother, where are you located? There seems to be an error involving the monetary holdings. They are claiming Dad's assets are currently unavailable. Hello, Victoria. I am currently in Harrison Fitzgerald's office. Do you recall who he is? Dad's legal counsel. The lawyer who presented the authentic will to an unoccupied room after you informed him I was on holiday. A pause followed. Mother, I am uncertain what you think you found out, but I found out that you are a dishonest person and an embezzler, dear. I also realized that your dad was significantly more clever than either of us gave him credit for. You simply do not grasp this. My intent was to shield you from the complications of handling all that wealth. You have never had experience with investment strategies, or I comprehend everything completely. You counterfeited legal records, committed deceit, and evicted your 67-year-old mother from her own property because you assumed I lacked the intelligence to perceive it. Her voice grew biting and frantic. Mother, you are not thinking clearly. The sadness has been too much, and someone is clearly manipulating your current emotional fragility. Her sheer nerve was astonishing. Even after being apprehended in the act, Victoria tried to control the situation. Victoria, darling, let me make one point perfectly clear for you. Not only did you not receive any inheritance, but the actual funds intended for you, the $10 million your father bequeathed, are also now legally mine, due to a thoughtful provision he inserted regarding treating me honorably. That must be incorrect. Detective Rodriguez is seated right beside me if you wish to talk about the improbability of facing fraud accusations with her. The line became silent. I could virtually hear Victoria's thoughts speeding up, strategizing, looking for a way out. Mother, please, could we meet and discuss this rationally? I am still certain we can find a solution. Oh, we certainly will meet soon, at the court building when your case is formally presented. You wouldn't possibly file criminal charges against your own daughter. A firm and cold resolve solidified within me. Just observe. I ended the call and glanced at Harrison, who showed evident satisfaction. When can we expect her to be taken into custody? Detective Rodriguez possesses sufficient proof for an arrest authorization. They plan to apprehend her tonight. What about Kevin? His monetary statements are being legally requested. If he was involved in manufacturing those papers, he will also face prosecution. My device vibrated with a message from Victoria. Mother, please reconsider this action. Remember the children. I presented the communication to Detective Rodriguez, who offered a cynical smile. Psychological pressure. A typical strategy for offenders in these cases. I responded, I am indeed considering them. They need to witness the result of stealing from relatives. About 20 minutes later, Kevin telephoned. Margaret, surely this can be settled without intervention. Victoria committed some errors in judgment, but bringing in law enforcement appears extreme. Kevin, were you involved in counterfeiting those papers for her? That is not the case, Margaret. You need to appreciate the strain Victoria was experiencing. She was concerned regarding your mental condition, your competence to manage significant amounts of money. Therefore, that confirms your involvement. It was not intended to harm. She truly felt she was safeguarding you by forcing me out of my own house and instructing me to find a place to pass away. Kevin did not speak. Kevin, this is what is going to happen next. Both of you will be taken into custody. You both will be prosecuted for federal fraud offences, and I will be relaxing in my house observing the outcomes. Margaret tried to be logical. I was logical for 4 decades. That approach did not benefit me. Law enforcement apprehended Victoria at 8:30 p.m. while she was dining at an expensive eatery, seemingly commemorating her inheritance alongside Kevin and another pair. As reported by Detective Rodriguez, she yelled about being wrongly detained and demanded to speak to her legal representative, who was revealed to be Kevin S. friend from the golf course and lacked expertise in felony. Defense: Kevin was taken into custody at his workplace the subsequent morning. The specialist in financial analysis linked the fake papers back to a printing business utilized by Kevin S. company for generating deceptive investment materials. Evidently, my son-in-law possessed a considerable history of unlawful behavior that Victoria either genuinely ignored or purposely overlooked. I spent the initial night returning to my property after 43 years sleeping in the primary sleeping area. Victoria had already moved her items into the area, substituting Robert's meticulous order with her mess of costly makeup and brand name attire. I placed all her possessions into large refuse sacks and set them outside the front entrance. She can pick them up once she posts bond. The house felt distinct now, not due to Robert's absence, but because I finally recognized it as belonging to me. For many years, I preserved it as Robert's private retreat, structured according to his tastes, his requirements, and his idea of our lifestyle. Now, viewing the space objectively, I understood how little of my identity was ever present within these rooms. That situation was due for modification. Harrison contacted me near midday with current information. Victoria's required bond payment is $50,000. Given that all her funds are inaccessible, she must find another party to satisfy the amount. Regarding Kevin, $200,000. Evidently, the magistrate was displeased by his background involving monetary offences. Who realized your son-in-law was being probed for investment deception? I definitely was unaware. But then again, I was typically left out of the majority of family money conversations. Victoria and Kevin perpetually addressed me like an immature person when discussing money, making ideas sound simple because they presumed I could not grasp them. They were about to discover the extent of my actual comprehension. Harrison, I wish to modify some aspects of the house. Victoria had already hired workers to conduct remodeling. I intend to go ahead with certain elements of those proposals, yet incorporating my personal taste. A wonderful suggestion. It is truly your place now, Margaret. Follow whatever brings you contentment. What truly pleased me, I understood, was the prospect of reversing every assumption Victoria had held about my inheritance. Her intention was to strip the kitchen bare, substitute the wooden flooring, and transform Robert's office into a cellar for wine. I decided to convert the office into a painting space and modify the wine storage proposal into a room for books. My cell phone chimed. An unidentified caller. Mrs. Sullivan, Johnny Cooper reporting for Channel 7 News. We have learned that you are the affected party in a major financial deception case involving your daughter. Are you open to discussing your experience? Information was spreading. In a large urban area, the detention of a notable investment professional and his wife for scamming his senior mother-in-law was major coverage. Ms. Cooper, I value your interest, however, I am not prepared to release public remarks. I recognize this must be challenging, yet your experience might assist other elderly individuals in recognizing indicators of financial exploitation by relatives. Her argument was valid. How many other people in my generation were being deceived by their adult offspring who considered them tiresome hurdles to obtaining wealth? Should I choose to recount my experience, would I be allowed to oversee the way it is shown? Without a doubt. We can set up a recorded conversation where you maintain authority over the finished version. I reflected on Victoria, likely confined in a detention facility at that moment, still convinced that this was merely an unfortunate event she could smoothly escape. Miss Cooper, allow me some time to respond. I might possess quite an extraordinary tale to share. Following the termination of the call, I served myself a portion of the costly vintage Kevin had gifted us for the holidays liquor I was clearly consuming in my personal house. Bought using my legitimate funds while considering whether to disgrace my daughter publicly on the news. My life had definitely experienced a peculiar shift. The entrance chime sounded precisely at 7 a.m. Looking through the glass, I observed Victoria standing on my doorstep, dressed in the previous day's garments and appearing as though she had instantly aged 5 years. She managed to secure her release somehow. I opened the door, yet did not ask her to come inside. "Mother, please, we must speak. We spoke yesterday. You instructed me to find a location to pass away. I opted to find a place to thrive instead." Victoria's eyes were bloodshot, and her characteristic flawless demeanour had entirely broken down. "I committed errors, grave errors, yet I am still your offspring." "Is that so?" "Because normal offspring do not usually counterfeit legal papers in order to embezzle their mother's legacy. My intention was not theft." She hesitated, plainly trying hard to find terminology that did not imply criminal activity. "You were doing what, Victoria?" "I was seeking to safeguard you from engaging in imprudent monetary choices. You have no prior experience dealing with significant amounts of wealth." Even at this moment, despite being detained for deception, she refused to acknowledge the reality. In Victoria's perspective, she was the aggrieved party due to my excessive demands. "Victoria, allow me to reveal something your dad confided in me half a year before he died. He mentioned his concerns about your sense of deserving, your approach to money, and how you interacted with people you deemed inferior." Her complexion lost colour. "Dad never uttered those words. He stated you brought to mind his sister Eleanor attractive, persuasive, yet utterly unable to prioritize anyone besides yourself. He informed me he was revising the will precisely because he feared the harm you might inflict on me if you had authority. That is simply untrue." I took out my phone and displayed an audio file. "In reality, it is factual. Your father recorded a video statement clarifying his choice, meant to be viewed if you ever challenged the will, or if you treated me badly following his demise." Victoria looked fixedly at the phone as if it were a venomous serpent. "He was informed, dear. He fully grasped your true nature beneath all that allure. The sole element he failed to anticipate was the lengths you would truly go to." "Start it," she murmured. I tapped the display, and Robert's voice resonated through the morning, distinct, controlled, and utterly crushing. "If this reaches your ears, Victoria, it confirms that my concerns regarding your morality were warranted. I wished I had misjudged. I desired that my daughter possessed greater moral strength than I assumed. However, if Margaret is playing this message, it confirms my suspicions in the most terrible fashion." Victoria collapsed onto the entrance steps while Robert's narration persisted. "I devoted 43 years observing your mother forgo her aspiration, her goals, and her autonomy to look after our household. She held side jobs to assist in financing your university tuition while I established my company. She delayed her schooling, relinquished professional prospects, and committed entirely to fulfilling the role of the wife and mother she believed we required. The message proceeded for another 180 seconds, every syllable deliberately selected, every phrase serving as a sharp tool cutting through Victoria's defenses and falsehoods. By the time this is audible to you, you will have realized that mistreating your mother has resulted in the loss of everything. I trust the actions were worthwhile. Once it concluded, Victoria was weeping, not the attractive tears she utilized to control others since youth, but ragged, genuine wails. He resented me, she murmured. On the contrary, Victoria, his love for you was sufficient to make him wish you would refute his fears. You chose to confirm them instead. She lifted her gaze toward me, dark makeup running down her face. What occurs now? Now you must deal with the repercussions of your actions, the accusations of deception, the probe, the widespread embarrassment. When this situation reaches the press, Channel 7 wishes to interview me concerning the financial exploitation of seniors. I am seriously considering accepting. Victoria's expression entirely collapsed. Mother, kindly consider the impact this will have on the grandchildren, on Kevin's profession, and on our entire lineage. I am giving it careful thought. I am reflecting on how you failed to consider any of those factors when you decided to execute several severe crimes. She rose cautiously, appearing more aged and disheartened than I had ever witnessed. I understand you may doubt this, but I never intended for the situation to escalate to this point. I desired the money. I sought stability and prestige. I yearned to avoid any future concerns whatsoever. For the initial moment since this terrible ordeal commenced, Victoria was speaking truthfully. I accept your statement, darling, but desiring an object does not warrant ruining people to acquire it. She gave a single nod, still shedding tears. What can I do to remedy this situation? You can begin by acknowledging that your actions were incorrect, not poorly judged, not aimed at defense, not complex, simply incorrect. It was incorrect. It was utterly and inexcusably incorrect. And subsequently, you must confront whatever repercussions arise with a measure of poise rather than trying to scheme your way to freedom. Victoria gazed at me for an extended period, perhaps seeing for the first instance not the easily exploited parent she was familiar with, but the person who had just decisively beaten her at her own game. I earned this fate, did I not? Yes, Victoria, you entirely earned it. 72 hours following Victoria's admission on the entrance step, Kevin's parent appeared at my dwelling. Eleanor Hayes embodied all my expectations, impeccably dressed, heavily adorned with ornaments, and projecting the special privilege derived solely from ancestral riches spanning 3 generations. Margaret, we ought to analyze this predicament logically. I permitted her entry, interested in hearing the explanation the Hayes clan had devised for their son's criminal accusations. Eleanor situated herself in my sitting room as if she were receiving visitors. Kevin exercised poor judgment, clearly, but seeking legal action against him appears quite spiteful, wouldn't you concur? Spiteful. Your son assisted in the embezzlement of my legacy and evicted me from my property. Kevin merely complied with Victoria's direction. He was not aware of the complete details. This woman was actually trying to hold my daughter responsible for her son's illegal conduct. I had to respect her sheer nerve. Mrs. Hayes, Kevin produced fake official papers. That is not merely following instructions. That constitutes participation in a scheme to commit deception. Kevin's legal representative feels we can finalize an agreement that satisfies all parties. You recover possession of your house. Victoria receives suitable repercussions, and Kevin avoids the negative press associated with court proceedings. Suitable repercussions as if Victoria's offences were equivalent to a slight breach of manners. What does this arrangement entail? Eleanor beamed, obviously assuming she had secured an advantage. Kevin's relatives are willing to provide payment for the trouble you have experienced. We suggest $1 million in return for dismissing the legal complaints against Kevin. $2 million offered to pardon the person who assisted in taking $33 million from me. Mrs. Hayes, your son participated in an operation that deprived me of every possession. You think $2 million makes up for that? Margaret, maintain a sense of reality. Kevin possesses a profession, offspring, and a status he needs to protect. Imprisoning him benefits nobody. It benefits fairness. Eleanor's composed exterior fractured slightly. Fairness? You are wrecking several families due to funds you would never have known how to manage anyway. There it was again, the identical patronizing demeanor that ruined my bond with Victoria. From their viewpoint, I was merely the servant who dared to complain. Mrs. Hayes, I believe our discussion has concluded. Margaret, I urge you to think again. $5 million. This is the absolute maximum payment. $5 million offered to allow Kevin to avoid jail. The sum was immense, yet the underlying moral matter could not be compromised. My refusal stands. Eleanor rose, having fully regained her calm demeanor. Understood, but you should be aware that Kevin's attorneys have uncovered rather intriguing facts concerning your husband's professional conduct. It would be regrettable if those details were disclosed publicly during the forthcoming court session. The intimidation was obvious, yet I experienced zero apprehension, only interest. What details are you referring to? The variety of information that could prompt you to question who the genuine offender is here. Once she left, I contacted Harrison right away. Margaret, regardless of their findings, it does not alter the specifics of Victoria's and Kevin's offences. But is there a chance it could impact the legal proceedings? Conceivably, if they are able to sufficiently confuse the facts, raise uncertainty concerning Robert's reputation or professional dealings, it might sway the decision of the jury. I considered Robert, our relationship, and all the hidden matters that might be concealed within for decades of life together. Harrison, I require comprehensive knowledge of Robert's company, each transaction, every collaboration, any possible irregularity. Margaret, do you feel sure about this? Occasionally, it is wiser to leave the past untouched. The Hayes relatives are threatening to sully Robert's legacy to safeguard their guilty son. I prefer to understand the reality beforehand. That night, I settled into Robert's private office, now mine, and started examining his archives in an orderly fashion. Robert maintained extreme organization, dating and classifying every piece of paper. Nevertheless, as I investigated his corporate papers more closely, I started encountering things that were inconsistent. Transfers of money to fictitious corporations, consulting charges that looked high, and associations with enterprises that seemingly only existed formally. By 12 o'clock, I had found a fact that completely redefined my understanding of my husband. The investigator Harrison suggested was a keen woman named Carol Chen, whose expertise lay in monetary offences. She spent 360 minutes in Robert's office taking pictures of the records and assembling what she termed the genuine representation of my husband's commercial operations. Mrs. Sullivan, your husband operated an intricate scheme for concealing illegal funds utilizing his advisory business. We are referring to multi-million-dollar unauthorized dealings over the last 10 years. This discovery impacted me severely. That simply cannot be right. Robert was the most trustworthy person I was acquainted with. I regret to inform you, but the proof is conclusive. He was processing money for organized criminal organizations by presenting his lawful company as a cover. I fix my attention on the papers covering Robert S. work surface, bills for work never performed, consultancy agreements with non-existent entities, and payment times that matched established unlawful dealings. How long has this been going on? Judging by these documents, a minimum of 12 years, probably longer. 12 years. While I occupied myself organizing social gatherings and participating in fundraising, my husband was aiding illegal operations. Mrs. Sullivan, furthermore, there is another matter. The $10 million allocated by Robert to Victoria originated directly from illegally processed money. If the Federal Bureau of Investigation learns this, they will confiscate all assets determined to be derived from criminal acts. The room began to reel. All items, the house, the assets, every piece of it. Unless what happens? Carol seemed uneasy. Unless Victoria S. and Kevin S. legal counsel is already aware of this and plans to utilize it for strategic advantage. If they alert the FBI regarding your husband's illegal acts, they could possibly secure protection from prosecution in return for collaborating. My daughter and her husband were more than simple embezzlers. They possessed the power to completely ruin me. What paths are open to me? From a legal standpoint, you could proactively contact the FBI, volunteer the details, and anticipate a measure of mercy. You would forfeit the majority of the money, but might retain the property. And if I choose not to, Victoria's and Kevin's attorneys will likely release this data according to a plan. You stand to forfeit everything regardless, yet you also face possible prosecution for consciously profiting from illegal conduct. I recalled Eleanor Hayes' self-satisfied assurance, her firm belief that I would accept their proposed deal. They had been aware of Robert's illegal activities all the time. Carol, how did this information reach them? Kevin works as a finance professional. He would easily have detected the irregularities in your husband's monetary statements. The true inquiry is, what exact course of action do they intend to take using these details? My phone sounded. Victoria's contact appeared. Mother, we must gather this evening. There are revelations about Dad that fundamentally alter the circumstances. I am already informed. Victoria, a pause. What specifically do you know? I am aware of the illegal money processing. I know about the criminal connections. I know that everything your father left us is tainted. Mother, listen to me carefully. Kevin's lawyers have been in contact with the FBI. They are willing to let us renegotiate our situation. What form will this restructuring take? Kevin receives exemption from prosecution in return for disclosing details regarding Dad's illicit association. You are permitted to retain $5 million and the house. The rest goes to the state. And for you. The accusations of deception vanish. We can all exit this difficult situation. It was cleverly devised, though disturbingly cold-hearted. Victoria had managed to convert my ethical success into her own tactical benefit. Victoria, your request is for me to assist you in gaining from your offences by taking advantage of Dad's illegal deeds. I am urging you to be realistic. The other choice means forfeiting everything and possibly being charged yourself. I surveyed Robert's office, seeing it plainly for the first time: the costly fittings, the uncommon volumes, the artwork, all acquired with unlawfully obtained money. I require a period for contemplation. Mother, the appointment with the FBI is slated for the following day. Kevin's attorney requires my response this evening. Following the conclusion of the call, I sat within the dimness of Robert's study, encompassed by proof of his secret existence for decades, married to an unfamiliar person. And a daughter who inherited more than wealth from her dad. She gained his capability for deceit. Yet she had committed a singular, major error. She had misjudged my resilience when facing extreme difficulty. I lifted the receiver and contacted Carol Chen. Carol, how soon can you schedule a discussion with the FBI for me? I have a narrative to share with them, and I anticipate they will find it highly compelling. FBI official Sarah Martinez appeared precisely like the ideal candidate for a government detective, earnest, smart, and utterly unaffected by attempts at persuasion. She sat opposite me in Harrison's meeting room, documenting our discussion and writing observations with exact consistency. Mrs. Sullivan, you acknowledge that by presenting this information willingly, you are implicitly admitting to gaining from illicit gains. I am aware, however, I prefer to disclose the facts to you rather than allowing my daughter and her husband to exploit these circumstances for their benefit. I presented all the details: Robert's covert activities, Victoria's deception plan, Kevin's falsified papers, and the attempt at coercion disguised as a negotiation. Your daughter is convinced she can exchange details about your husband's illegal acts for freedom from her own indictments. That is exactly her belief, and she assumes I will comply because I am terrified of forfeiting everything. Agent Martinez displayed a slight smile for the first time. Do you feel fear, Mrs. Sullivan? Agent Martinez, a fortnight ago, I was a mourning wife staying in a low-cost motel. Currently, I am here willingly admitting to government officials about my late husband's criminal operations. Apprehension is no longer my dominant feeling. What is the dominant feeling? Genuine, intense resentment towards people who discounted my cognitive abilities for years. Agent Martinez's smile grew larger. Mrs. Sullivan, would you agree to be fitted with a recording device? A few hours later, I was seated in my main room with a hidden recorder secured to my torso, anticipating the arrival of Victoria and Kevin for what they believed was a capitulation discussion. They knocked precisely at 8 o'clock that night, both attired as if going to a professional meal. Kevin held a small case likely containing signed agreements for immunity and negotiated terms. Mother, you appear healthier than you have in weeks, Victoria commented, giving me a kiss as if everything were normal. I feel healthier. Gaining perspective often results in that. Kevin opened his case with the practiced motions of someone who had participated in comparable discussions previously. Margaret, our attorneys have arranged this arrangement very advantageously for you. You get to keep the property, $5 million in legitimate wealth, and full protection from any criminal allegations linked to Robert's activities. Legitimate wealth. That is a curious choice of words. Victoria cast a cautionary glance towards Kevin. Mother, the essential matter is that we are secured. Previous events are forgotten, and we progress collectively. What occurs with the $33 million Robert truly willed to me? Mother, that money is corrupted. It is impossible to separate it from Dad's illicit operations. Accepting $5 million represents the optimal achievable result. And regarding the two of you? What is your benefit from this negotiated deal? Kevin shifted closer, regaining his certainty. We succeed in putting this regrettable incident behind us. Victoria's accusations are dropped, my standing remains unblemished, and our household can recover. Mistake, he persisted in labeling serious fraud and error. Kevin, assist me in clarifying one detail. Precisely when did you become aware of Robert's criminal conduct? What are you implying? I am asking, did you know about the illegal processing of funds when you wed Victoria? Or did you find out recently while formulating your plan to appropriate my inheritance? Kevin and Victoria looked at each other momentarily. Margaret, I do not believe that detail is pertinent to the topic we are currently addressing. In fact, I find it extremely pertinent because if you were aware of Robert's offences yet kept silent, that establishes you as an accomplice after the event. And if you only learned of them while engaged in your own unlawful activities, that makes you exceedingly unfortunate. Victoria's self-control began to fail. Mother, what is your ultimate point? My point is that the two of you have been organising this for numerous months, potentially years. The counterfeit will, the discovery of the illegal funds, even Kevin's connections to document forgers. Absolutely none of these events were accidental. That assertion is absurd. Is it so? Agent Martinez considers it highly believable. Both their faces lost their natural complexion. Agent Martinez, Kevin breathed softly. Federal Bureau of Investigation. She has shown great interest in my account detailing prolonged abuse of an older person, deception, and intimidation, especially the segment where you tried to coerce me using my late husband's offences. Kevin suddenly rose, extending his hand towards his case. Margaret, our dialogue is finished. Actually, Kevin, I believe it is just getting underway. Agent Martinez, accompanied by 2 more federal officers, entered my living area while Victoria and Kevin remained paralyzed. The case Kevin attempted to reach was immediately seized along with both their cellular devices. Victoria Sullivan Hayes and Kevin Hayes, you are being detained for conspiring to commit internet fraud, abusing an elderly person, and trying to pressure a government informant. Victoria faced me with a look of profound treachery. Mother, why would you treat your own relatives this way? In the exact same way you were able to counterfeit legal records and take my assets, dear. Only my approach adheres to the law. While the officers restrained them, Kevin attempted a final, frantic tactic. Margaret, you have no comprehension of the severity of your actions. Certain people associated with Robert's dealings will not welcome the involvement of federal authorities. You have placed yourself at risk. Agent Martinez halted the recitation of their constitutional rights. Mayor Hayes, are you issuing a threat against a federal collaborator? I am simply alerting her to the true circumstances she faces. The true circumstances, Agent Martinez declared, is that you just accumulated an extra charge of threatening a witness. Once they were escorted away, Agent Martinez returned to her seat opposite me. Mrs. Sullivan, Kevin's caution may hold some validity. Your husband had affiliations with some perilous figures. How perilous were they? Primarily, the Torino Criminal Organization. They have been exploiting legal enterprises to process illegal gains for many years. Your husband's advisory company served as one of their most lucrative fronts. The designation held no familiarity for me, but the officer's serious expression conveyed all necessary details. Are you suggesting my life is genuinely at risk? Possibly, yet there is another revelation concerning your husband's work that must be shared, a piece of information that fundamentally alters the entire case. Agent Martinez extracted a weighty folder, the type indicating extended periods of investigative work. Mrs. Sullivan, your husband was doing more than just cleaning money for the Torino Group. For 12 years, he acted as an FBI mole, supplying intelligence about their undertakings while appearing to assist their illegal processing. My perception of reality shifted. Robert was employed by the FBI. A highly concealed, lengthy inquiry. The operation was so sensitive that even the regional FBI branches were kept unaware. Your husband aided us in constructing lawsuits against several criminal organizations. Nonetheless, the wealth was genuine. The FBI permitted him to retain a portion of the process money as remuneration for his assistance and to protect his secret role. All the assets he left you were acquired via lawful collaboration with federal authorities. I looked at her, trying to comprehend this new finding. Therefore, the $33 million belongs to me legally? Your husband passed away before the inquiry was completed. Yet his collaboration spanning a dozen years directly resulted in the detention of 47 individuals and the confiscation of more than $100 million in illicit wealth. Why was I not informed? Due to the fact that the probe was still active and we were unsure regarding your degree of participation or awareness. The deception executed by your daughter and son-in-law actually aided us in verifying that you were innocent. Victoria and Kevin possessed none of this knowledge. They suspected illegal deeds, but they had no idea about the federal corporation. Their strategy was to extort you using details that would have truly cleared your husband's name. The irony was so profound it bordered on artistry. Victoria tried to obtain my inheritance illegally on 2 occasions, first through falsification, and second through attempted coercion using fragmented data. Agent Martinez, what is the next step? Right now, you recover your wealth, your daughter and son-in-law face federal indictment, and you have the chance to choose the life you wish to create utilizing your lawful assets. As for the hazard Kevin referred to, the Torino organization will be too occupied with their own judicial difficulties to concern themselves with you. We will be conducting authorized searches across 3 different jurisdictions tomorrow. I observed my sitting room, viewing it once more as the setting of my revival instead of my disgrace. Agent Martinez, may I pose a query? Certainly. In your professional assessment, am I a morally bad person for experiencing gratification regarding Victoria's apprehension? Agent Martinez grinned, Mrs. Sullivan, based on my professional judgment. You are a person who declined to be targeted. That is not indicative of maliciousness, that is indicative of motivation. Half a year later, I was in the kitchen of my remodeled house preparing coffee for 2 people. The light of the morning shone through replacement windows that functioned correctly, highlighting the work surfaces I selected myself for the first time in 43 years. Greetings, Margaret. Dr. Sarah Chen, Carol's sibling and my current finance consultant, entered the entrance holding a substantial set of investment documents. Greetings, Sarah. Are we prepared for our 3-month assessment? The preceding 6 months involved intense legal activities, press discussions, and personal changes. Victoria and Kevin were each completing an 18-month sentence in federal custody. The media coverage regarding their offences had established me as a recognized figure within organizations protect. In older adults, your accumulated wealth is doing remarkably well, Sarah reported. Taking a seat at my new dining area, the philanthropic organization is completely functional. And the educational grant program has already chosen the inaugural awardees. The Margaret Sullivan Foundation, dedicated to the protection of the elderly, had grown into my most important endeavor, utilizing $15 million from my inheritance. We were financing legal support for older individuals experiencing financial exploitation by relatives and backing legislative modifications to reinforce statutes protecting seniors. Any news? Regarding the film project, Netflix finalized the agreement for production. They aim to commence recording next month. My experience had attracted widespread media focus, surpassing the initial news reports. The Mother's Revenge, a narrative of American crime, was being created as a short television series, with profits designated for senior advocacy groups. And Victoria. Sarah's demeanor became reserved. She has corresponded once more. Her attorney asserts she wishes to express remorse and seek pardon. Victoria had sent me 17 letters from the federal penitentiary. I read the initial few, which varied from attempting to vindicate herself to sounding frantic, before deciding not to open any more. Certain connections, once damaged, cannot be restored merely through dialogue. Sarah, have my feelings regarding that matter shifted? Not based on our prior discussions, but people undergo change, Margaret. This applies even to those who have made awful decisions. I reflected on the woman I had been half a year ago, sad, relying on others, ready to receive whatever slight amount of respect my family offered. That version of myself might have felt compelled to pardon Victoria, to reconstruct a bond founded on obligation and long-held customs. Yet that person no longer existed. Sarah, arrange an appointment with Victoria's attorney. Not for the purpose of mending fences, but to state a fact unequivocally. What fact? I want Victoria to realize that her conduct carried consequences extending beyond judicial penalties. I want her to understand that she irrevocably ruined our connection, and that her offspring will mature knowing the reason their parent was incarcerated. That strikes me as severe. Excellent. It is intended to be severe. Victoria consciously made mature decisions that injured people she was meant to care for. She will not be permitted to avoid the psychological impact simply because she sent some correspondence from jail. Sarah recorded information in her professional notebook. Concerning the young ones, Victoria has formally asked for supervised time with them. My interaction with Victoria's children will be determined by the decisions they make as grown-ups, not by their mother's attempts to reform. The entryway signal sounded. Through the pane, I saw a delivery vehicle carrying a considerable container. That must be the fresh furniture destined for the workspace, I informed Sarah. The painting room represented my most enjoyable remodeling effort. Robert's previous retreat was now a well-lit, open area where I was reigniting my enthusiasm for artistry, an activity I ceased once I wed and adopted the function of supportive wife and parent. Margaret, may I pose a private question? Certainly. Do you ever feel sorrow over the way these events unfolded? The incarcerations, the publicity, the lasting separation from your relative. I reflected on her query while signing for the package. Half a year ago, I was overlooked a wife who lost her husband, possessing no money, no property, and no future opportunities. Presently, I am a charitable millionaire with a grant organization, an agreement for a film, and a commitment that reached far beyond simply staying alive. Sarah, my daughter, tried to appropriate all my assets and render me without shelter. My son-in-law produced falsified papers and attempted to intimidate me with threats. They demonstrated their true selves when they believed I was unable to counteract them. But they are still related. No, they only share biological material. Relatives are those individuals who safeguard you during times of weakness, not those who use your weakness to gain monetarily. Sarah shut her briefcase, accepting my clarification. Moreover, I appended, observe the person I evolved into once I ceased letting them determine my value. After Sarah left, I moved through my home, truly my own dwelling, now furnished according to my preferences, arranged based on my central goals. Within the art space, I revealed my most recent artwork, a depiction of myself standing under intense illumination, her expression focused on upcoming events. The person depicted in the artwork bore no resemblance to the sorrowful wife who confined her possessions into travel bags half a year earlier. This person projected strength, self-reliance, and bravery. She appeared to be someone who had grasped that the ultimate retaliation is not achieving parity. It is transforming into the person your adversaries never believed you were capable of becoming. Outdoors, the daylight diminished beyond plants I had personally situated in ground that was rightfully mine, on a property I secured through cleverness and boldness instead of receiving through wedlock or lineage. In the coming days, I intend to proceed with constructing the existence I selected rather than the one others devised for me. And if Victoria desires to re-establish a connection with this new version of me, she should arrive equipped with far more than jailhouse notes and insincere statements of regret. It would be better if she demonstrated a fundamental change. A transformation equivalent to mine. I appreciate your attention. Remember to sign up and feel comfortable sharing your own experiences below. Your perspective is important.